Hi, I'm John Phipps with U.S. Farm Report, and I'm talking with Tom Dorr, who's the CEO of the U.S. Grains Council. Tom, you had to put out a little trade fire while you're still working on it. Explain to us who have been reading about the Chinese action exactly what the ramifications are.
What happened, John, on the 28th of December, in the middle of the holiday season, the Chinese filed an anti-dumping action against the United States producers of distillers dried grains, specifically addressing the dry milling industry, more importantly. All of this caught us by surprise in the fact that the Chinese clearly have a very strong demand for energy crops.
Right, that's what I can't figure out. Why pick a trade fight over something you really need?
Well, I think the easiest way to say it is these kinds of things do not make any sense. They are not capitalistic in the sense in which we know them. They're very political. And there are a lot of reasons one conjecture, and at this point, it's probably a little early to conjecture, although we do know that the Chinese and the U.S. governments have been having these tit-for-tats on currency exchange rates and a number of trade issues. We know that the ag community tragically lost a poultry anti-dumping case. We also know that the U.S. has imposed tariffs on imported tires, and we now just had some anti-dumping charges filed relative to wind turbines imported into the country from China. So this is kind of an ongoing process. I'm encouraged from the standpoint that I think our government is getting very sensitive to the fact that the way we will grow our economy most effectively is through tapping into these growth markets in these international arenas.
And we're going to win some, we're going to lose some. I think we need to be grown up about this. And at different times, you'll think you lost, and it turns out it was an issue about something else. I know black pipe is something that China is deeply concerned about. Be interesting. Are you looking to see if there's any kind of ag codicil or ag information come out when Hu Jintao is here later this month?
Well, yeah, it will be interesting to see what does come out of that. As we've discussed earlier, they are now going into their 12th five-year planning process within the Chinese Communist Party. And the Party Congress meets for the month of March. And so we would not anticipate that the Chinese leadership would be doing a lot of, really significant, politically sensitive things between now and the time they get through their party Congress. It's like any government who has to go through elections. They're cautious about what they do and how they do it. On the other hand, once they get out of that, and from the information that we've gleaned relative to their growth in China as an example, there clearly is going to be a strong demand for energy crops. They are going to import somewhere between 55 and 60 million tons of soybeans this year. As I've said earlier, 60 million tons of soybean translates to 40 million tons of soybean meal. And for farmers who understand concentrated rations, you can do the math and figure out that's going to require a lot of corn or corn equivalents. And that's a pretty exciting opportunity. But two things have to happen. Number one, the Chinese have to be willing to sit down with us and send solid signals that give us the assurance that we can invest in the infrastructure.
What would that look like? What would a solid signal that you would think would be recognizable?
Well, I mean, I think one of the challenges right now is that historically they have focused on being self-sufficient. But as their economies have grown and as their population has transitioned from rural areas into urban areas, and as they deal with the same challenges that we faced in this country when young people didn't want to milk cows and didn't want to stay on the farm and raise hogs and moved off, they've got the same thing. Now they've got to transition their rural population and simultaneously figure out how to, in the short term, access these higher quality proteins that they need. People are not really aware of this, but the Chinese have 650 million head of hogs in their hog inventory. A large number of those are being transitioned to what we would call industrial production farms, where you have 5, 10, 15,000 sow operations. Those are going to require highly concentrated, sophisticated feeding programs with concentrated feed rations, and those are going to demand quantities of corn and quantities of feed. If they're willing to sit down and give us some sense of how they build that out, so that they can then realize that food self-sufficiency is really nothing more than food security, and food security actually is based on trade and transparency.
Right.
Transparent markets, transparent food safety issues, transparent biotech issues. And when you have that level of transparency and you begin to build up a level of trust and confidence, then the U.S. farmer will respond unequivocally.
I think you're right.
And likewise, I think we will respond to the kinds of things that they want in that product mix relative to them giving us signals. We'll make the investments to give them what they want.